Hello, my name is S.K. Williams, and today I would like to talk to you about the holy religion of atheism. This is a term I myself coined. The followers of the holy religion of atheism do not use it, but they do use other terms. Terms which are a dead giveaway that they are followers of the holy religion of atheism. And they have other similar traits, one of which is having a list of prescriptive responses to religious apologists like me who attack atheism viciously and force them to defend themselves. One of which is that you shouldn't listen to an idiot like me since I have bad grammar. You may not notice my bad grammar, but I will explain it shortly. You see, when I type, I randomly capitalize words. This proves I do not know how to properly capitalize things and proves my grammar is bad, and this, in turn, proves that everything I say is wrong. Oh, and it is random. There's no pattern that I follow. I just choose at random which words to capitalize and which don't. I randomly capitalize words, and it really proves how stupid and inferior I am. But more on that in a moment. The term the holy religion of atheism is one which I created. But I did not create it whole cloth out of the blue, having it miraculously appear out of nowhere. Rather, the term the holy religion of atheism is based upon the religion of humanity. The religion of humanity was created in the 19th century by Auguste Comte, a philosopher and a mathematician, and his ideas went on to create humanism, the philosophy of humanism that we have today, and from thence secular humanism. Indeed, while I will no doubt be accused of saying atheism is a religion, in truth, when I use the term the holy religion of atheism, I am actually referring to a form of secular humanism. I'm not using it interchangeably with secular humanism, mind you. Rather, it is a type of secular humanism, a denomination of secular humanism, if you will. Not that it matters. For you see, even though I have given an explanation that I am not saying atheism is a religion when I say the holy religion of atheism, and I have explained that it is actually a term I apply to a form of secular humanism, the atheist community will ignore the explanation, and they will insist I called atheism a religion. They will also say I am generalizing all atheists. I'm not. I don't think all atheists belong to the holy religion of atheism. I also don't think that atheism and secular humanism are synonyms. Regardless of the fact that my actual position is not atheism is a religion, I will nevertheless be told I said atheism is a religion, and others will ridicule me because I said atheism is a religion. And as we all know, religious people, especially religious apologists like me, constantly call atheism a religion in order to drag it down to the same level of religion. So, of course, I said atheism is a religion. And what I said is easy to debunk. All the atheist has to do is say, atheism is not a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a god. Atheism is a religion like bald is a hair color. Or perhaps, atheism isn't a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a god. Atheism is a religion like not playing sports is a sport. Or perhaps, atheism isn't a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a god. Atheism is a religion like not collecting stamps is a hobby. Or perhaps a more truncated form, atheism isn't a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a god. Nothing more. In truth, though, atheism is not a lack of belief in a God. And while atheists have chimed in showing hard, irrefutable evidence that debunks what I'm about to say, they also claim religious apologists are stupid and dishonest. So either I am stupid and don't know this, or I am dishonest and lying, or perhaps both stupid and dishonest, but they have never actually even debunked the claim that atheism is a religion. Yes, I know, I've just contradicted myself. I've just admitted that I am calling atheism a religion. Well, no, I'm not. But I am saying this. If, dear listener, if I had called atheism a religion, if I call atheism a religion, not that I did, if I called atheism a religion, you cannot simply say, no, atheism is not a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God, and leave it at that. For you see, my contention that atheism is a religion is not simply an assertion I say with no evidence. They'll claim I did. I never give evidence for what I say. Neither do any religious apologists. Religion is based on faith, and faith by definition is belief without evidence, at least when talking about religion, so I simply cast an aspersion. But I will give evidence, and all you have to do is keep listening. However, I will not give evidence that atheism is a religion, but that is irrelevant. I'm going to give evidence for my real claim, that they follow a religion. But, for the sake of argument, let us suppose, and I said for the sake of argument, let us suppose, and again for the third time I said for the sake of argument, let us suppose, keep in mind that means that I am not confessing that this is the truth, but I am simply conceptualizing a situation in which I actually did say what they claimed. The only evidence they have that I am wrong when I call atheism a religion is that they say it is not a religion. It is a lack of belief in a God. Simply asserting that I'm wrong and simply telling me how atheism is defined is not evidence that I'm wrong. Especially since they never address why I call atheism a religion. Which brings me back to the point. The reason they never address why I call atheism a religion is because they can't. All they know how to do is repeat their dogma that atheism is not a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God. Atheism is a religion like not collecting stamps is a hobby. And, of course, insult and ridicule. Like pointing out how I randomly capitalize words, and that proves how stupid and inferior I am. Quaint, isn't it? But you see, evidence relies very, very heavily upon a claim, and the only reason atheism is defined as a lack of belief in a God is so that they can say atheists make no claims, and atheists have no burden of proof. And we've all heard that before, that atheists make no claims, atheists have no burden of proof. The theist claims his God, and only his God exists, and the burden of proof is on him. What's more, the Christian, for instance, claims his Christian God exists, and that it is not Buddha or Allah or Krishna, it is the Christian God, and must prove it. But the atheist makes no claims and simply asks the theist to prove it. Is this true, though? Of course it's not. The atheist makes the claim that God does not exist all the time. Simply pretending that because the word atheism is defined as a lack of belief in a God, that means that atheists make no claims, is to say that we must subject reality to the way we define words in the dictionary. That because the word atheism is defined in the dictionary as a lack of belief in a God, that means that atheism is indeed in reality a lack of belief in a God. And what's more, all who say, I am an atheist, must have the dictionary definition of atheism applied to them. They merely lack belief in a God, they make no claims, and have no burden of proof. Yet, they also claim that atheism is the null hypothesis. They say that atheism is the default position. It is the beliefs that we must hold as true until proven false. This carries with it the same assumption that the atheist has no burden of proof. For you see, if theirs is the default position, we must believe the position of atheism that God does not exist until proven otherwise. And yet, therein lies the rub. How can atheism be the default position that God does not exist, that we believe, until it is proven false, while simultaneously atheism is not a position on anything at all, it is a mere psychological state in which one lacks belief in a God? Atheism cannot be both a lack of belief in a God and the default position. It is either a psychological state in which one lacks belief in a God, or else it is a claim that God does not exist that we must accept as true until it is proven false. It cannot be both. And yet they demand we accept that it is both. The truth is, the only reason it is a lack of belief in a God and the default position is so that they can deny having a burden of proof while demanding we believe without evidence what they are claiming because, well, you don't need evidence for the default position, now do you? Anthony Flew came up with defining atheism as a lack of belief in a God in 1974, I believe, in The Presumption of Atheism. Perhaps it was 1976. I don't have internet access while I'm making this, so... The problem I have with this is, of course, that I am going to be accused of either being a liar or an idiot, or better yet, both a liar and an idiot. For you see, what more can you expect from someone who randomly capitalizes words when he types? Here's the thing, though. The atheist community has debunked this by showing that the word atheist indeed is a 3,000-year-old word going back to the Greek word atheos that has always meant lack of belief in a God. A means without, theos means belief in a God, theism means belief in a God. You put those two together, you get without belief in a God, which is another way of saying lack of belief in a God. So obviously this is what the ancient Greeks meant. Very clearly they meant lack of belief. And besides, we can point to people before Flew who said atheism was a lack of belief in a God, like Charles Bradlaugh, like George Jacob Holyoake, like Anne Besant, even Bertrand Russell's flying teapots in space were all about defining atheism as a lack of belief in a God and explaining how atheists have no burden of proof. When Russell came up with his invisible teapots orbiting between Earth and Mars, his entire point was, those who claim these invisible teapots exist have the burden of proof, but those who lack belief in the teapots do not. That is the very meaning of what he said, proving that atheists, even back then, understood atheism as a lack of belief in a God, thus proving it's a 3,000-year-old definition. Because nothing in the 21st century proves that the definition of atheism has always been a lack of belief in a God going back 3,000 years ago to ancient Greece, like pointing to 19th and early 20th century Englishmen. Of course, who am I to question the words of pastor rationality rules and other pastors within the holy religion of atheism? But I do question it, because I'm a delusional, stupid, religious person who randomly capitalizes his words. I will question it. Just as I will question that atheists are filled with compassion, and that atheists have common human empathy, and that atheists base their morals on empathy, and that religion allows you to bypass empathy, the religious lack empathy and compassion, and Christians, most of all, lack empathy and compassion, and are cruel and hateful. For you see, I know this is not true, even though I'm an idiot who doesn't know how to properly capitalize words, and I randomly capitalize words as I type. I know it is not the truth. Just as I know, my angry tone in this video shall be interpreted as me ranting and being on the verge of an emotional breakdown. Pity they've never heard of acting. You see, I'm a bit of a showman at heart. Indeed, it's true. In real life, I wear costumes quite often. before my house burned down, had quite a collection of historical ones. I had a Confederate uniform, for instance, a British redcoat uniform, a nice 19th century suit, a World War I era British coat, replica, of course, but nevertheless, and a World War II era British overcoat, very nice, very warm, for those cold, cold, bitter days. And I still have some costumes. Some were kept with my mother instead, and I have slowly accumulated some more. I have not reacquired my Confederate coat, or a new replacement for it. I have not acquired a new British redcoat uniform, but I am working on it. Still, this aside brought to you at around the 15-minute mark, because I know that it doesn't matter, you see. This is a bit of a plan. I want them to think I'm ranting. I want them to miss the point. Not because I wish to conceal it, but because I wish to be blatant with it and show how snap judgments work. It will test the reliability of their critical thinking and evidence-based thinking. It will test their rationality. So on with the show. The truth is, rationality rules is both an idiot and a liar. The point of Bertrand Russell's teacups, was it teapots or teacups? I wonder. Nevertheless, the point that Russell was making was not that he who makes the claim that these things exist alone has the burden of proof. The one who lacks belief and asks for evidence does not. His actual point is actually one you don't even need the rest of the context for, because if you watch the Pastoral Rationality Rules sermon on how atheism has always been understood as a lack of belief in a God, the very quote Pastoral Rationality Rules preached in his sermon, if you read it, without him telling you what it means, without him priming you, is very obviously not saying, theists claim a God exists and have the burden of proof, atheists lack belief and do not. What Russell's real point was that the belief that there are invisible teapots orbiting Mars is so preposterous and so ridiculous and so absurd no sane, rational person would believe it. But if this belief were ancient, and if the majority of people believed it, and if the majority of people believed it because of an ancient book that they believed said so, then, even though it is still an irrational statement, society would think of it as a rational one. His point was not, theists make a claim that a God exists and have the burden of proof, atheists make no claims and have no burden of proof. His point was that God very clearly doesn't exist, any more so than the invisible teapots do. It's ridiculous and preposterous and absurd to believe in God. And the only reason we do is because some old book said so, and the majority of people think so now, because they always have by tradition. His point was very different than what Pastoral Rationality Rules claimed in his sermon. The same is true, of course, of all the other examples. When Charles Bradlaugh said he did not claim there is no God, he did not know what the term meant, he was not saying, I merely lack belief in a God. He was instead ridiculing the idea that there was a consistent definition of the word God to deny. That's not the same thing as saying atheism is a lack of belief in a God. The same thing was true of George Holyoake. He very clearly said God didn't exist elsewhere, but we should ignore that so we can take one cherry-picked quote and twist its meaning. And the same is true of Anne Besant. Her point was that she simply did not wish to discuss whether or not God existed. Which seems rather apropos, since she did not die an atheist. She died a theosophist. That's a fact that you don't seem to find very often on atheist websites. like the Freedom from Religion Foundation. But it is nevertheless true. She died a theosophist. And her atheism, shall we say, was motivated more by hatred of Christianity than it was based upon lacking belief in a God due to insufficient evidence. But you don't have to believe me. After all, I'm an idiot who doesn't even know how to properly capitalize things. I randomly capitalize my words. Don't get me wrong. Anthony Flew drew a tremendous amount of inspiration from the free thought movement and the literature of the free thought movement. Anthony Flew's entire courtroom analogy in The Presumption of Atheism came from them. And George Jacob Holyoake wrote God in the Docks, where we imagine putting God on trial, for instance. It was not original to Anthony Flew. And certainly some of the things that the free thought movement was saying in the 19th century does lead us to the direction of saying atheism is a lack of belief in a God, not a belief that God does not exist. But none of them crossed that threshold until Flew. That is because Flew took these ideas and developed them further. Of course, saying that is anathema since, well, atheism isn't a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God. Atheism is a religion, like abstinence is a sex position. So obviously, everyone who becomes an atheist does so as an individual who questions religion, deconverts, as they say, which, by the way, is a real word. You see, institutions use it, and if an institution uses a word, it is real and it is valid. I have learned my lesson. It is not a silly made-up nonsense word. It is a real word, because institutions use it. Of course, institutions also use the word atheist, but that's not a real word, since we don't have a word for other things that people lack belief in, like a unicornist. But it's perfectly valid for atheists to point that out, you see. I simply don't have the rationality and skill in logic that they do. Which begs the question. You see, atheism is not a religion, and every atheist you talk to comes to their own conclusions, does their own research, and thinks for themselves. So obviously, Anthony Flew couldn't have simply been carrying on a pre-existing tradition, because there is no tradition. Indeed, how can there be? Atheism is not a religion. It is a lack of belief in a God. Atheism is a religion, like not watching birds is watching birds. It's absurd. There are no beliefs to share in atheism. Atheism is not a religion. So it is an amazing coincidence when you keep hearing the same thoughts, the same arguments, the same terminology. Oh, I keep forgetting. Individual people looking at the same evidence can draw the same conclusion. Of course, that doesn't account for the terminology issue. Or at least I think it doesn't, because I randomly capitalize my words, so I clearly don't know good grammar. But here's the thing. Am I supposed to think that the first atheist I heard mention the flying spaghetti monster and comparing God to the flying spaghetti monster because they merely lack belief in the flying spaghetti monster in the same way they merely lack belief in God? They are not, of course, using the flying spaghetti monster to show the belief in God is ridiculous. No, no, no. They are simply expressing their mere lack of belief. But nevertheless, the first atheist that expresses mere lack of belief in a God that does not make any claims and has no burden of proof by telling me about the flying spaghetti monster and talking about how they hope his noodly appendages, bless me, ramen, did so wholly independently from the second atheist who told me the same thing, who compared God to a flying spaghetti monster to express their lack of belief, who wasn't claiming God doesn't exist, even though the belief in God is just as ridiculous as believing in a flying spaghetti monster. It is not a claim, carries no burden of proof. But nevertheless, they said, flying spaghetti monster. They told me they hope his noodly appendages, bless me, ramen, coincidentally, and equally coincidentally, a third atheist has approached me and said that God is ridiculous. He is like a flying spaghetti monster. And told me this was an expression of his lack of belief. He carries no burden of proof. And then he told me that he hopes his noodly appendage blesses me ramen. Oh, indeed, there have been many who have said this to me. Many who have said this to me. And it is a coincidence, because each individual atheist is arriving at the flying spaghetti monster to compare God to express their mere lack of belief that carries no burden of proof, all on their own, individually, and quite separately. You see, they came to this flying spaghetti monster as unique individuals. They are simply drawing the conclusion of comparing God to a flying spaghetti monster, based upon the same evidence. And when they all tell me they hope his noodly appendage blesses me, and in the prayer in ramen, to make fun of the word almond, it too is coincidental. Each individual atheist created the flying spaghetti monster, and it is only a coincidence that the others have said so. Isn't it? Just as there are no atheist organizations preaching atheism, which is why we should donate to the good work of the American Humanist Association, American Atheists, the National Secular Society in the United Kingdom, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Humanist International, the Center for Inquiry, which once was the Council for Secular Humanism, and the Richard Dawkins Foundation, who merged. Why we should support the atheist experience, the atheist community in Austin, Texas, and various YouTubers who all take donations. Oh, and don't forget Apostates Refuge by Pastor Owen Morgan of the Holy Religion of Atheism. I know I just insulted him, since atheism is not a religion. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God. Atheism is a religion like off is a function of a computer. It is very clearly, very obviously that Owen Morgan is not a pastor, but he does run a convenient 501c Apostates Refuge charity, where the money all goes to him, doesn't he? And we should donate money to others, like the Prophet of Zod, and to, I don't know, maybe Podvogia and Vice Rhino. I'm certain Dark Matter 2525 will enjoy your donations to their non-existent, non-religious ministries, because they merely lack belief in a God, nothing more, nothing less. There are no atheist organizations. Nothing equivalent to churches. No clergy telling you everything. No holy books. That's why we need to read various books, like The End of Faith, Letter to Christian Nation, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, The God Delusion, Breaking the Spell. What about the various books of John Loftus, which unfortunately lack variety. Or perhaps we should read the books of the late, great Hector Avalos, like Fighting Words. Perhaps. And perhaps we should quote them, as what they say is absolutely true. All, of course, while insisting we do our own research and think for ourselves and survey the evidence. That's what good atheists do, isn't it? That's why even to this day we hear about how Hitler was a devout Catholic, and that the Catholic Church supported him, and that neither he nor any other Nazi were ever excommunicated by the Catholic Church. Just as we hear that Christianity is bad for mental health, Christians are, you see, ableists, and they blame the disabled for choosing to sin, and give them a message that all they need to do is pray hard enough and believe hard enough, and their problems go away, and work harder. And when that fails, they are blamed because they are choosing to sin. And can you imagine the hell that this puts people through, being ridiculed for a disability they can't help? How hateful the Christians are, and how they lack empathy because of their delusional religious fantasies. It's a good thing atheists would never make fun of someone for being disabled. Just like it's a good thing I'm a liar, isn't it? You see, They keep rightly pointing out that I randomly capitalize words and using that to prove how stupid and inferior I am. And I lie to them, telling them that I don't randomly capitalize words, and I follow a pattern that is based upon a form of English that is closer related to German. But it is not identical to an older English style. I developed it myself because I am legally blind and I am dyslexic, and this helped me focus on the words. I actually tend to capitalize all nouns and modifiers and a few other choice select words. This way, my eyes can focus better on the sentences. There is a very distinct, very clear pattern I am following, so it is not random. I also tell them that it is not bad grammar, since for one thing it is done for a purpose, and for another, if you read it aloud, you don't notice the alleged random capitals. At best, even if it was done mistakenly, and even if I was randomly capitalizing words, it would be a syntax error and not a grammatical one. But they don't know what syntax means. I'm certain they think you use syntax to hold up things on pasteboards and corkboards. To them, I simply have bad grammar, and I have bad grammar because I'm an idiot, and since they are saying it, it is obviously true. They don't see a pattern. They say I randomly capitalize words, and that's exactly what I do because they said so. And they are certainly not ridiculing me due to a disability. After all, that would mean they lacked empathy for my condition. And we all know it's the Christians who lack empathy. It's the Christians who lack compassion. Christians tell disabled people they are not praying hard enough and that they can pray away their problems, and if they succumb to any condition, it is because they haven't prayed hard enough, and it is their own fault, and it's bad for mental health. So we have this loving atheist community who would never, ever harm people's mental health by blaming them for their disabilities. So when they ridicule me for randomly capitalizing words, then I really do randomly capitalize words, and I have no valid reason for it at all. I'm lying about being dyslexic, I'm lying about being legally blind. I randomly capitalize words, and I rightly deserve the ridicule that I get for it. The ever-empathetic and ever-compassionate atheists have said so. In truth, I plan on releasing a few of these videos. The videos where I talk like this, where I do an imitation of Burgess Meredith in an exaggerated form, because I was inspired by an HGuard marathon of the Twilight Zone. I hadn't seen that show in years. I love it. But they'll never know. They'll either not know I made these videos at all, or if they do, they won't listen to them. They won't consider much. They'll just hurl their stupid insults. And they'll all be the same ones. But let's face reality. The holy religion of atheism is a term I gave to a form of secular humanism they follow. Believe it or not, humanists originally called their belief system a religion. They only stopped doing so in order to justify implementing their beliefs into law whilst preventing others from doing the same, especially Christians. Secular humanism is a term that is used to distinguish religious humanism from secular humanism, and the idea is that religious humanism is a religion, secular humanism isn't, and a lot of people have this daft idea that religious humanism believes in a god and secular humanism doesn't. It's atheistic. In reality, religious humanism is just as atheistic. And indeed, a lot of atheists love the myth that they can repeat to deflect criticism. This myth that Raymond Bragg was the principal author of the Humanist Manifesto, the very first one from 1932, and that Bragg was a Christian. He was a minister within the Unitarian Church, so he was a theist. He believed that God existed, and he was a humanist. That proved that it's a philosophy, not a religion. That proves that you do not have to be an atheist to be a secular humanist. Funny that. You see, the very first Humanist Manifesto, which was from 1933, not 1932, I apologize for the earlier mistake, reads as follows. The first article in the Humanist Manifesto is, religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Such an odd thing to say for a Christian, wouldn't you agree? The second article says, humanism believes that man is a part of nature and that he has emerged as a result of a continuous process, perhaps compatible with Christianity, but not the way that the atheist community keeps insisting. But most perplexing is this. Article 6 makes it rather difficult for me to understand how Raymond Bragg, a Christian who believed in God, could have written this and signed off on this and agreed to it. You see, Raymond Bragg definitely believed in God because the atheist community cannot be wrong. Humanism is a philosophy, not a religion, and people can believe in God with it. It's completely compatible with Christianity, so obviously, the idea that humanism is a rival religion to Christianity is wrong. Obviously, the idea that it is atheistic is wrong. Secular humanism is atheistic, but not the original humanism, not religious humanism. Obviously, Raymond Bragg, a Christian minister of the Unitarian Church who believed in God, could not have possibly said otherwise. And yet, according to them, he is the principal author of this document, and Article 6 is rather disturbing from that point of view, because now we have a bit of a conundrum. Reading Article 6 of the Humanist Manifesto, 1933. We are convinced that the time has passed for theism, deism, modernism, and the several varieties of new thought. Interesting, isn't it? He's just summarily dismissed the existence of God, claiming that the time has passed for it. The time has passed for theism, for deism, for modernism, etc. How peculiar for a Christian who believed in God to say. How peculiar indeed. The truth of the matter is, if you read this document, it also outright calls humanism a religion in the preamble and in a few of the articles. And the articles make it very, 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 very obvious that they are rejecting the existence of God. Let's not kid ourselves. Raymond Bragg, being a minister of the Unitarian Church, does not mean he believed in God, and this document makes it very obvious that he didn't. And you can find books by him on the Internet Archives. He is very obviously an atheist, or at least was. So, whenever you hear them say Raymond Bragg was the author of the Humanist Manifesto and a Christian, it's not very true. What is very true is that humanism has a very, very long relationship with eugenics. The Humanist Manifesto had 33 signers, many of whom were themselves eugenicists and eugenics supporters, such as John Dewey, for example. Many within the humanist and secularist movement very openly promoted eugenics. The founder of the National Secular Society in the United Kingdom, Charles Bradlaugh, supported eugenics and held some very racist views, even though we are told it is the Christians who held the racist views and the Christians who supported eugenics, and the atheists, agnostics, and deists who fought it, just as it was the atheists, agnostics, and deists who fought slavery, and the Christians, of course, supported slavery. Or so we are told. Some even go so far as to cite great atheist leaders like Robert Ingersoll, William Lloyd Garrison, Susan B. Anthony, and even, perplexingly, John Brown. I say perplexingly because Even though the great divine prophet Christopher Hitchens most holy wrote in his volume of sacred scripture, God is not great, how religion poisons everything, that John Brown became an effective abolitionist only after reading Thomas Paine and was less religious and welcomed freethinkers into his camp. It is bizarre to think of John Brown as an atheist, or even as someone not motivated by his religion, if you know anything at all about John Brown. A religious zealot who openly declared that his motivation was his religion. He says the same thing, rather oddly, of Garrison. Am I supposed to take the divine prophet, Christopher Hitchens most holy, hallowed be his name, blessed be the name of science, blessed be the name of reason, blessed be the name of no God, seriously, when he says William Lloyd Garrison was not very religious, and it was upon reading Thomas Paine that he became an abolitionist, and at which point he became less of a preacher and more of an abolitionist, and that it was Paine and not the Bible and not Christianity that motivated him, and that by the end of his life he was barely connected to Christianity. Am I supposed to take that seriously? I know, atheist community, that the great Christopher Hitchens was a divine prophet most holy to you, and that he spoke the sacred words of reason and no God. What he said is obviously true, and I am a religious apologist. A Christian apologist. I am a lawyer for Jeebus who follows a practice that is inherently dishonest, where I start from my conclusion and look for evidence that supports it while discounting others and twisting things. Not at all like atheists, who merely lack belief in a God due to insufficient evidence, and look at the evidence, following it where it leads to honest conclusions. No, I'm a religious apologist, so naturally I am lying to you, and the great Christopher Hitchens is honest, and don't forget to remind me about how my grammar is bad, because I randomly capitalize words, because in your infinite mercies, in your infinite empathy, in your infinite compassion, you realize I'm lying about my disabilities, and you are very right. I'm stupid and don't know how to properly capitalize words, but it is nevertheless preposterous to claim that William Lloyd Garrison only became an abolitionist because he read Thomas Paine, or that he became more of an abolitionist and less of a preacher because he read Thomas Paine, and it is absolutely absurd to say that he was inactive as a Christian at the end of his life, or that he condemned all the churches. At the end of his life, he was fighting the Chinese Exclusion Act, and on the grounds that it was not Christian. And this wasn't some public relations statement that this secret atheist said either. He very, very publicly said that in his ministries, in his church. Susan B. Anthony was a Quaker who believed in God, not an atheist. It is irrelevant that the divine prophet Christopher Hitchens most holy, or the divine prophet Hector Avalos most holy said it. What matters is the historical truth, is it not? The evidence, what the atheist community claims to believe in. Here's the truth. Take for it what you will. Even though you in the atheist community see Christopher Hitchens as a divine prophet most holy, I do not. And I value truth far more than you do. Because as much as you say, because you have no religion, you simply follow the evidence where you lead, whereas I, a religious apologist, a Christian apologist, start with my conclusion and go where it leads. I won't listen to anything my priest didn't tell me, and won't look at the evidence. The simple reality is, when I read God is not great, how religion poisons everything, and see Hitchens claim that all churches supported slavery, that only a few dissenters who were actually liberals who were giving up their faith, based upon Thomas Paine of all people, began only in the 18th century, or only in the 19th century, to protest slavery. And that no Christian protested slavery until the 19th century, and even those that did were dissenters from their church. That every single church that existed in the 19th century supported slavery, and only a handful of liberal dissenters objected. That is simply absurd. The Quakers were opposing slavery in the 17th century, and contrary to the idea that the Pope in his doctrine of discovery, endorsed slavery of the natives. In reality, the Catholic Church opposed race-based chattel slavery as well. The Methodists did. John Wesley famously opposed slavery. And even in America, the Methodists were opposed to slavery. A few in the Methodist Church did not. But the simple truth is, Methodism was a well-known bulwark for abolitionism. The simple truth of the matter is, Hitchens lied. He lied when he said every church supported slavery. He lied when he said every church supported slavery of the Africans. He lied when he said only a small handful of dissenters did so. He lied when he said their motivation was not their religion. He lied when he linked everyone to Thomas Paine. He lied when he said William Lloyd Garrison was not a Christian, or was more of an abolitionist and less of a preacher when he read Paine. He lied about Susan B. Anthony, and so did the great divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy. They all lied to you, and I'm betting you don't care. You'll just jump to a new excuse to hate Christians. And remind me that I'm an idiot who randomly capitalizes his words. Hitler was not a devout Catholic, and he did not enjoy the support of the Vatican. The Vatican actually opposed the Third Reich, and the claim that no Nazi was ever excommunicated by the Church, except for Goebbels, and him not for the atrocities of war, but for the high crime of marrying a Protestant, is equally a lie. The Bishops' Conference in Germany issued a uniform excommunication order for the Nazis in the 1930s. And while they famously say it was just a little tiff and they lifted it a couple of years later, this is a lie too. Oh, it's true that they amended it, but they never quite lifted it. When membership into the Nazi Party became mandatory, they no longer excommunicated people merely for being members, but rather they maintained that you would be excommunicated if you became a member because you agreed with it, and not simply out of compulsion. That is not a selling endorsement. Of course, the other excuse they use, that the German bishops may have excommunicated him, but the Pope didn't. All that does is prove you have no idea what you're talking about. Of course the Pope didn't bother to excommunicate Hitler. He was already excommunicated. It's not like an excommunication is simply a formal denouncement. Excommunication means that he was removed from the life of the Church, the sacraments, with the exception of the sacrament of confession, of course. Excommunication is not something that is regional either. It's not like the German bishops excommunicated him in Germany, but he can hop over to Austria and take communion. At least, he's not supposed to. For the Pope to excommunicate Hitler, he would have to lift the excommunication of the German bishops and then excommunicate him personally, and that simply wouldn't be necessary. We know that positive Christianity was not simply him saying he wanted to promote Christianity in a positive way or make it more active. It was a rival view on how Christianity should be, created by Albert Rosenberg specifically to replace Christianity and eventually serve as a measure, a stepping stone for a Germany to transition between being Christian and being somewhat occultic or neo-pagan in a way. Positive Christianity was not ever linked to the traditional beliefs of Christianity, and while many atheist websites claim that positive Christianity retained all of the traditional beliefs of Christians, keep in mind that positive Christianity denied that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. It denied that Israel had any special connection. It denied the entirety of the Old Testament. It denied that Jesus was God. It denied the existence of the Trinity. Now, here's a good question to beg you. What exactly did they retain? The truth of the matter is, dishonesty is common within the atheist community, you see. The great divine prophet Hector Avalos, most holy, hallowed be his name, blessed be the name of science, blessed be the name of reason, blessed be the name of no God, lied to you as well. In his book, for instance, he claims that Hitler called German Protestantism a great ally of nationalism, and he lied. They didn't say that. Hitler said that when compared to Catholicism, the Protestant churches are a better ally to nationalism than is Catholicism. But then he went on to criticize them, saying this only goes so far, and they will often surrender nationalism for their own interests in other ways. So, leaving that part out just proves how dishonest the divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy was. So as much as you wish to view him as both impeccably honest and as utterly infallible because he was a divine prophet most holy, he is nevertheless very much lying to you. He lied to you about Oratori as well, who did not justify what the divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy called the Canaanite genocide by claiming that they would go to heaven anyway. That makes no sense and proves that the great divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy was either willing to completely lie about what Christians taught, or simply did not know. Oratori, of course, would not think that the children of the Canaanites who were killed would go to heaven because they had not reached the age of accountability. This is because Oratori believed that no one went to heaven prior to the time of Christ. Which means that the great divine prophet most holy Hector Avalos lied. And I say lie because he's picking a target that's not so well known in popular culture. He had to know what he was saying was false. But he wanted to fix it so that he could condemn in a very childish and simplistic way the Pentecostalism he grew up in, and I don't really think he's being fair and accurate about it either. So let's be realistic. The atheist community has holy books, though it claims it doesn't. The atheist community has organizations, though it claims it doesn't. The people in the atheist community claim not to be part of those organizations. This may or may not be true in a formal way, but you're still getting your ideas from them, and many of you still support them, so what's the difference? The atheist community claims to not have a shared belief system, and it is very obvious that they do. They believe that science and religion were at odds, for instance. Weirdly, they also believe that eugenics was a creationist-based pseudoscience that atheists opposed, even though John Draper, one of the men who came up with the conflict thesis between religion and science, was a big supporter of eugenics. Just look at the Draper Labs. They claim that a Christian clergyman, Malthus, created eugenics. This is not true either. Malthus may have been an influence on Galton, but Galton very much so invented eugenics. They claim that it was Christians promoting slavery and not atheists. This is not entirely true. They claim that it was Christians, not atheists, promoting racism. That wasn't true. I mean, how can you read Herbert Spencer or Carl Pearson or even Charles Bradlaugh and think that it was the Christians promoting racism and eugenics? They claim that centuries of Christian anti-Semitism and teaching that Jews were evil and irredeemable and unable to convert and all that, and they were evil Christ killers, and pointing to Martin Luther and claiming Hitler claimed Martin Luther was a hero of his, and this unbroken line that both Catholics and Protestants shared, that they hated the Jews, and that was until Vatican II that they changed their mind in the Catholic Church and changed their teachings that the Jews weren't evil. Am I supposed to believe all of that? Am I supposed to believe the Holocaust came purely out of Christianity and not out of science, by which we mean eugenics and secular humanism? Of course, I can't believe that, because Luther may have been quoted by Hitler in propaganda, but it was very obvious that the book on the Jews and their lies was very much not roundly printed up, not well known to the general public in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. There was no ongoing tradition of it. What's more, even though the divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy says that Luther had a 7-point plan for the Jews, he really didn't. You see, that infamous 7-point plan for the Jews were simply things that Luther wrote in his book that Avalos decided to put on a plan and call it the 7-point plan. Luther never called it the 7-point plan. He never had such a list made up that he called the 7-point plan for the Jews. And the reason the divine prophet Hector Avalos did this, yes, I know, I must think I'm a mind reader. You find it hilarious how I think I know Hector Avalos's beliefs better than he does. But keep in mind, this is obvious. The Nazi Party platform had 25 points to it, and Avalos wished to connect Luther to that party platform, so he called it the 7-point plan, and even went so far as to outright state that the Nazi government could be seen as nothing more than a modern extension and revival of Luther's 7-point plan for the Jews. So they took Luther's 7-point plan for the Jews and implemented them anew, modernizing them slightly and adding to them so they had 25 points. This is, of course, nonsense. The 25 points of the Nazi platform was to get them elected. It was not, as one list that is still famously on the internet said, their constitution. It was their political party platform that they used for elections. It was not a continuation of Luther, and it did not purely focus on the Jews either, but no one seems to question the great divine prophet Hector Avalos Most Holy. He makes several such statements that are not entirely honest, like when he would cite, or like when various atheist sites claim that Hitler can be proven to be Catholic because as a boy he thought a priest was an ideal and he wanted to be one. If you read on, he says that such a notion was ridiculous and he was disabused of it as he grew up, but who cares about facts, right? Just like we need to insist that no one has ever killed in the name of atheism, and that communists killed in the name of communism, not atheism. Or even better yet, that communism is a form of religion, even while insisting that it is impossible for an atheist to be religious. I think I've spoken enough, though, for now, at least. I shall return. Until then, thank you, God bless, and goodbye.